Hi there, I'm Emily, and I am still getting used to this new office chair that I'm in. It's not exactly new, but it's new in this corner, and I'm gonna be moving around a little bit. I kind of just do that when I talk. So a while ago, I set up this goal for myself to read all of the Vampire Chronicles in order, right? And I'm slowly like trucking along at them because I can't read books back to back all in the same series. I have to like leapfrog in between them. I don't know, it's just a thing I do. But I'm finally at Memnoch the Devil. Now, I've read most of these when I was in high school, which I'm not doing the math, but it was a while ago, and I'm 30 now. So it's been a while, and I like reading them in kind of like in a new light for myself. And I remembered most of Memnoch the Devil. I know that it's where Lestat meets the devil and goes on a whole Dante Inferno style journey, learning things from Memnoch's side. Now, I will preface this just by saying that I'm not a religious person. I don't mind reading about God and the devil as fictional characters, because to me they are fictional, but I know to a lot of people they're not. And I just want to bring that up because a while back, during like a live stream I was doing, we were talking about books. Someone asked recommendations for me for like YA series, and I was in the middle of the Percy Jackson series, so I recommended that because it's honestly great. But then they mentioned that they actually do worship some of those gods, and it's weird to them reading them, the gods, as fictional characters when you actually do worship them. So, hey, I get it. That would be kind of strange. And that's totally fair. And I feel like this might be similar, though I will admit, given the assumption around the general audience of the Interview with the Vampire crowd, myself included, loving very gay vampires. Might not be a problem, but just in case. And you know what? Actually, at the end of the video, I'll just talk about and like spoil the framing device that happens at the end there. So while I don't recommend skipping any of these books, honestly, if you just want a quick recap of the framing device for this one, just see where Lestat and our characters are in like modern day, I'll put a timestamp. Anyway, we are here to chat about Memnoch the Devil. I think it's Memnoch. It could be Memnoch because it's CH at the end, but if I'm wrong, let me know. I'm gonna be saying Memnoch. And full spoilers, of course. Also, this is like book 5 in a series, so like I said, spoilers are gonna happen. Some characters are gonna be named. And I will admit, just for myself, going into this one, I thought I was going to be bored, and I wasn't. Lestat doesn't go on his journey with like Mr. Memnoch until like halfway through, and the entire opening, the beginning framing device, is that classic Anne Rice vampire angst of Lestat pining and loving his victim as he's eating him, and also falling in love with the man's daughter from afar. Like, that's the bread and butter that we love. And while all of that is happening, while he's hunting, he's realizing he's being stalked again, which feels a little like a repeated trope from the previous one, you know, body thief, but also I think it's like technically a pass. I think it's like technically a pass because they go on like very different journeys with body thief and Memnoch. People are just obsessed with Lestat. I mean, even within their own world. So the stalker, the new stalker, his second stalker, is the devil himself, but he does not like the name Lucifer or Satan. No, he is Memnoch now. And he wants Lestat's help. But Lestat is kind of like rightfully freaked out by this. But Lestat agrees to go with Memnoch to hear him out. Interestingly, at the insistence of the daughter I mentioned before, the person he ate at the beginning of the story, that dude has a daughter, her name is Dora. She's important. And Lestat meets her, they talk, they chat. He falls in love with her because it's Lestat and he can't not fall in love with everybody, every human, every person he meets. So at her insistence, at Dora's insistence, he goes off with the devil too to hear a side of things, like I said. And I will admit points to Lestat here because one, he's seeking out advice from another person, and he informs Armand and David about Memnoch, the devil, and everything that's happening and what the devil kind of wants. He's keeping his friends in the loop. He's still very Lestat self-centered, but he's keeping his friends in the loop this time. And still impulsively going for it, but being a bit more cautious. So, character growth. Now, Lestat goes off with Memnoch to learn his side of the tale, and I'll admit, I thought this is where I was gonna get bored. I thought it was gonna be like a boring church sermon when you're a kid, but Memnoch tells Lestat a creation myth that also ties in like the Big Bang and even evolution, how that was God's plan all along. It's that focus here that evolution was God's divine plan the whole time. That like Memnoch and a bunch of his angel buddies were like watching the earth be made and created space-wise. and then like fish being developed and them flopping onto land and starting to walk, and then like birds and lizards, and then like primates. And then the angels being a little freaked out when those primates start walking and start looking a little bit more human like us, but also not just human, more angelic. Humans look like angels. And this is what starts the trend of Memnoch going back to God, being like, hey, this is a little weird. Why do they look like us? Why do they look like us? What's happening here? What's your plan? I trust you, but what's your plan? And God basically just sits back and goes, hey dude, chill, just watch and trust me. That's his theme through the whole thing. If you hear a cat now and then, that's Alice. And I'll admit, I just found that honestly interesting. I think I'm sure I've come across interpretations like that before, but I also think it's kind of interesting to tie that in and tie that together in the 1990s. So I won't go into like point by point, detail by detail what Memnoch is telling Lestat and everything. He doesn't even mention Adam and Eve. Memnoch builds himself a human body and he goes to explore. Not gonna lie, kind of at God's idea. He says like, hey, go study some things. Memnoch is like, okay, I want to do this right. I'm going to make a body. He makes a male form for himself. He makes a form for himself, and he's at the outskirts of this village. He sees this woman, and the woman sees him. And in a spur of the moment, very consensual moment, because she's definitely into it too, the two go off into a cave and just have sex. And that is really when God gets pissed, because sex is bad. So that really sparks off the disagreement between God and Memnoch and everything. But skipping ahead again, during the arguments, Memnoch is like, I'm glad I turned into human for a quick second to see what it was like from their perspective. Well, at that idea from Memnoch, God kind of decided that like, okay, you know what? I'm going to try this too, but I'm going to one-up you. I'm going to do you one better. I am going to be born of a woman, be raised as a child, grow up as a man, and then willingly die as said man. Jesus Christ. So that's very interesting that like God kind of got the idea from him. But then later on, just a little bit later on, Memnoch comes across human Jesus. God knows he's his God. And the two of them are talking again. And God/Jesus admits he knows he's divine. He knows he's gonna die, but he's got it all planned out. Just trust him. But then Memnoch also kind of points out that like, sure, you're giving this a valid shot. Kudos to you. But you know you're divine. You know you're gonna be fine. You know you're gonna be okay. You're not living with that fear and dread and doubt that humans live with every day. It's a good attempt, but you're kind of missing the point at the moment. Needless to say, God kind of waves him off and says, why can't you just trust me? Everything will be fine. But pulling out of the recap for a second, okay? Like just for me, I've never come across an interpretation like this, and I just find it interesting. And I do find it even more fascinating that you can basically track Anne Rice's like faith and mindset even throughout all of those books. Because there are 20 years written between Interview from the 70s and Memnoch from the 90s, right? And like, yes, obviously it's the same person, it's just Anne Rice writing them all. But she feels different. And people just change over time. So it's fascinating to kind of see it in this kind of a written form because she's exploring something through Lestat, her self-insert character. Now, I'll also admit, I don't know all of Anne Rice's biography. I don't know her whole life set. I think, like, I knew she refound her faith, but then I think she lost it again, but it was also, like, rocky. I don't know where things ended up around the end because she passed now, but the different spiritual and like religious viewpoints just from books 1 to 5 here, it's stark, it's fascinating. So jumping back into the story, just because I want to like talk through a few other points too. Memnoch's whole goal, and he needs Lestat's help, right? He's kind of vague on that, on what exactly he needs that help for. But from the story, from what I've gathered, it's basically to have God at least admit that he was wrong, that he made a mistake at some point, that maybe he's too closed off. But Lestat, a bit overwhelmed, more than a bit overwhelmed, given everything that he's seeing right now and all of that going on, he's a bit overwhelmed and he refuses to help and he tries to leave. There's a big fight, there's a big scuffle, there's a bunch of spirits trying to stop him, plus like Memnoch himself, and he loses an eye. Memnoch accidentally rips his eye out of his face. And Lestat like watches it bounce down a couple of steps, but he can't go back and get it because he's at like the doorway, the exit, so he just leaves. He just bamfs off. So he's back on Earth. He is traumatized. He's definitely freaked out. There's like evidence that it was all real, and he's kind of freaked out. So he goes back to his friends. He goes back to Dora, Armand, and David, tells them everything that happened. And throughout the whole journey, Lestat has gained this artifact called the Veil of Veronica. And it's basically a veil. It's a piece of fabric that has Christ's face on it. And like full 4K detail. And as he's showing it to them, he lets Dora hold it for a second while he's talking with the others, and Dora just leaves. Dora just takes this thing and leaves, goes to the nearest church, and is waving it as proof and a miracle that everything that they've believed in is true and real. And then all of the religious zealots and the priests and everybody just come flocking in. And Armand, our little dramatic boy Armand, who has also kind of been wrapped up in his past in, like a cult worshipping the devil back in, 1800s Paris. Dude's also got some religious trauma. Well, he stands in a courtyard in front of the church, in front of hundreds of people, humans, and as the sun rises, he declares his faith and bursts into flames. Quick note on Armand here, we do not see a charred body, and we do not see ashes. We don't even see scattered ashes. If we at least saw, ashes, given how these vampires work and, have to die, then I would kind of, believe this death a little bit more. Plus, like I said, I read them all back in high school, so... Armand, what the fuck? So David gets Lestat out of there, and Lestat is, still freaked out. He's still 100% paranoid, trying to also convince everyone that, no, it was a trick, this isn't real. But it's also very close to exposing vampirism to everybody, hence what Armand just did. So David gets him out of there, and Maharit shows up, who is their queen. She's the most ancient of all of them, and she chains Lestat up in this small, secluded, well, that's a pretty big room, actually, but it's this secluded space. I think it's a ruined church, even. He's chained up there to be, just held down until he calms down. Great showcase of mental health care there, guys, too. Just wow. So he's chained up, so he doesn't cause a ruckus, and Louis is there watching all of this, but he doesn't have the authority to stop any of this. And actually, yeah, that's really the only time Louis pops up in this one. He's just got a cameo at the end, but okay, Louis is there. And Lestat is left there in chains for weeks, months maybe. And then one night he wakes up and the chains are gone. He's able to move, he's free, and he just leaves. He just leaves the church. The story ends, and our boy is he's a little broken. He's devastated. He feels diminished almost because of what he went through and everything that happened following. Dude's got a lot to process, and it's just a really bleak ending, but really good narrative vibes. Not gonna lie, I had a great time. There is one element though that I do wish was a little bit different, and it's that Lestat gets his eye back. Memnoch ripped it out by accident, right? And he watched it fall down the stairs while he was escaping hell. Well, when Maharit shows up, she has a letter written just pleasantly from Memnoch, kind of apologizing for the whole thing. And here's your eye back in the letter, and it's actually his eye, and he's able to squish it back in his face. These events have left Lestat completely scarred and altered, and there are ramifications that he's gonna have to process and deal with. And I kind of wish he didn't get his eye back so that there was a physical representation of that. It's not mandatory, but I just thought, you remember how in Tales of the Body Thief, when I was talking about that, Lestat never really deals with any consequences? This is the book of consequences at the end, and the eye could have helped represent that. But other than the eye, that's more of a nitpick, I guess, but there's the theme here throughout the whole story of questioning things, questioning faith, questioning your faith, questioning reality even. But it ties back at the end, it ties together where it doesn't matter either way. Your questions don't matter, and your denial doesn't matter. I'll admit, I don't know what Anne Rice was maybe trying to interpret or express through the story. I might be reading into it differently, but she was definitely exploring something for herself, and this feels kind of just as personal for her as much as Interview does. So yeah, bit of a bleak ending. Fascinating story leading up to it. I don't know exactly what Anne Rice was trying to get across, but I'm also okay with that because this was very personal for her, obviously. And I hope this video isn't too bleak, because I'll admit, I don't exactly know how to sign off on this kind of a conversation, but I will say I'm excited still for the rest of the Vampire Chronicles, and the next one is one that's entirely new to me, Pandora. I was finally able to find a copy of Pandora, because in high school I just completely missed this one. I also skipped Vittorio the Vampire by mistake, so I'm gonna read that amongst all of these too. But yeah, I'm so excited for the first, like, female-led vampire book. Not in existence, but Anne Rice's, you know. So I'm definitely looking forward to this one, and in the meantime, I am in the middle of The Book That Broke the World by Mark Lawrence. Loving that. So I am going to sign off. I'm going to get some food and kind of, like, process all of this. I'm going to sign off. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like, and I'll see you guys next week.